Welcome to Tiger Drop Films, and thank you for stopping by, because today I got a fun video. That is, I'm going to talk about 3 in particular redeemed villains from the Yakuza series that really stuck out to me. And of course, there's been numerous cases of redeemed villains throughout all of fiction, but when it comes to the Yakuza series, they just do it in a way I really like. And if you're new to my channel and you really like this video, well, here's 4 other Yakuza videos of mine that I highly recommend you check out. They're worth your time. Without further ado, let's get into this. Villains. We love them, and we love to hate them. But sometimes if they just turn around, we might just change our opinion on them. Now, who's first up on my list today? And keep in mind there's going to be spoilers galore. There's no binding or stamina X that can hide you from these spoilers. First choice is Go Hamazaki from Yakuza 3 and 4. Now, why did I pick Hamazaki? Well, I think it's kind of clear. By the time of Yakuza 3, he's your standard new Yakuza boss antagonist character. He kills a restaurant owner in Yokohama, he eats a goose, just the head straight up, then he blows the place up and walks away like a true king. And it turns out that Hamazaki gets a lot of his money and power by working through the Snake Flower Triad, courtesy of our old friend likeadragon. And throughout Yakuza 3 he does pop up quite a bit. He meanders and bickers with the other current captains and leaders and lieutenants of the Tojo clan, such as Mine, Daigo, and Majima, just to name a few. Oh, and Kashiwagi. And what's interesting is that Hamazaki, while he is an antagonistic force, as I'm sure you're well aware, he didn't get a boss fight in the game. Not in the campaign. You can find him in one of the weird bonus modes, which is pretty cool. But that's it for Hamazaki. Until the end of the game, where Hamazaki is now a homeless guy since Kiryu defeated the Snake Flower Triad. And just when you thought the game was about to be over since Kiryu already defeated Richardson and Mine, it turns out that when Kiryu is in Theater Square with Yuya and Kazuki and Haruka, Hamazaki pops out of nowhere, and despite all of Kiryu's best efforts to talk him down and tell him that there's always a chance to bounce back in life, just to find the willpower and it's up to your own decisions, well, Hamazaki decides to just stab Kiryu in the gut. The Dragon of Dojima, however, does not react with anger, instead in his own stoic way. That manages to get through to Hamazaki, as Kiryu goes into his supposed quote-unquote final moments. It's a pretty intense scene, and definitely kind of breaks your heart, and as Yakuza 3 gets into the end credits. But this was interesting to me, because sure, Hamazaki may have been a bit unresolved in terms of just Yakuza 3 itself, since he was still a character, a villainous character, that, as you can see, even though he lost everything, he still was a bad guy. And I think that the ending of Yakuza 3 definitely works in terms of its own plot. But in Yakuza 4, I did not expect for the writers to pick up on Hamazaki's story, as we get to see him go through a bit of a redemption, as he meets Taiga Saejima in jail at Okinawa Penitentiary. And as the narrative progresses, we go from perceiving Hamazaki as still an antagonistic guy, you know, the guy who stabbed Kiryu, our boy. And then it turns out Hamazaki spills his guts out to Saejima while they're on top of the wall and about to escape into the ocean, where he reveals to Saejima that a man named Kiryu still believed in him even when he was in his last moments, and even though Hamazaki harmed him. And that really stuck out and spoke to Hamazaki's soul, which is why he went down this path of trying to redeem himself even though he was already in prison and couldn't really do much. But upon seeing the legendary Taiga Saejima, he had his chance to act out and do some good in his life. And even though it looks like Hamazaki apparently dies, he still shows up again in Kiryu's part of Yakuza 4, where he brings the documents he stole from the Okinawa prison with him, and we get the big reveal that the primary antagonist of this game, Deputy Commissioner Seishiro Munakata, is trying to revitalize the the dastardly plan of our worst enemy, Jengu, from Yakuza 1, from the original 10 billion yen incident. So I truly find that Hamazaki, being the one to bring this revelation to Kiryu, is just an amazing way to show how much he's changed, while also providing some more context to previous events in the franchise. I just think that's really cool, you know? Hamazaki is trying to turn over a new leaf, and in doing so, he reveals some shady dealings from political and police figures. I think it's pretty interesting that ex-Yakuza was the one who found all this out, of all things. And I really like that Hamazaki is able to kind of just talk to Kiryu as a bit of a bro now, since he tells him that he became oath brothers with Saejima. And a key part of Hamazaki showing up at Morning Glory is Haruka's reaction. I'm glad they built off of this, as clearly, like you and me, the audience, and Haruka, we really don't want to trust Hamazaki. I get it why she doesn't. He stabbed her Uncle Kaz right in front of her, in the middle of a whole crowd, in broad daylight. That's terrible. So, Haruka is clearly hesitant to trust Hamazaki, and he even expresses that he understands why she doesn't. And I'm glad they kind of brought up this aspect. It makes it a true sequel to Yakuza 3 instead of just being another entry in the franchise, if you know what I mean. And I really like this part. So they're kind of able to sweep things under the bridge in a way of letting some of this disgruntled pain go a little bit. It's not all of it, but I'm glad they brought it up. And then as we see, Hamazaki tragically dies in the old Tamashiro office during the fight with the Okinawa guards and Saito. And this is what really sticks out to me in terms of talking about redeemed villains. If a villain's able to come back and try to change, but then they die because karma still catches up with them, that bad karma, and then I feel bad for the guy, well, that's going to really resonate and stick out to me. I felt bad for the guy. Now clearly he still had it coming, but I admire that in his final days he tried to do some good for all the shady shit he's done. And then it's revealed over a phone call that Haruka stayed with Hamazaki till his final moments in the hospital. So it's nice that both Haruka and Kiryu got to have a bit of a bond in this whole situation with Hamazaki. It's, little things like that I think goes a long way with their characters. So overall, Hamazaki is an interesting character. He may have not gotten a boss fight in Yakuza 3, a proper boss fight, but I'm glad that Yakuza 4 more than makes up for it, with a pretty good story, and is pretty much the first character besides Terada to return in a sequel and have a pretty different twist on his character. And now let's talk about the next character. Yutaka Yamai from Infinite Wealth, or Yakuza 8. Yamai was one of those characters, a new antagonist, that I really didn't like at first, not because of, how he was written, but just because he was really a despicable character. But as the game progresses, you really start to see a different side of the guy, some of the light and the darkness, so to speak. And yes, that's not just because he's one of those Yakuza bosses you fight 15 million times in one game, but after a while and listening to both of his theme songs, the guy does start to grow on you. I may not be the biggest fans of the 2 long battles that occur in his hideout at the theater, but when it comes to his actual boss fights, he's a lot of fun to fight. With the crowbar, and he even gets a flaming crowbar at one point. He's got some great just moves, he's quick, and he truly is Ichiban's equivalent to Majima. That might not be a new revelation to some, but when I recently played the Big Swell DLC, I was happy that one of the boss fights was Yamai and Majima teaming up. Good stuff, good stuff. Now, when it comes to Yamai and the Yamai Syndicate, he truly is a fish out of the water. He's a Yakuza so far away and displaced from his main land of Japan, and clearly not the biggest dog in town at Honolulu. No, that goes to the Barracudas and the Triad. Instead, Yamai is just a sort of American Yakuza clan trying to make his way through Honolulu. And what I find interesting is that, as you can see, his base is just a broken down movie theater compared to the Triad that has that gigantic casino and hotel, or Dwight and the Barracudas where he has that really fancy hotel on the beach and a labyrinth of underground networks and a flip-sided mall that is only for underworld dealings. And your mind just has that movie theater. It's a bit humble. And what I really like about his story is that Yamai is a guy who knows about the Dragon Dojima. I'm glad there was no twist that he was some old character from the games. Instead, Yamai was just a grunt back in the day that clearly knew of Kiryu and his prime. I like that. It makes sense. And I really think that helps kind of give a little bit more of a spotlight to Kiryu in the first half of Infinite Wealth when it's more of a Ichiban game. So Yamai is cool. He knows of Kiryu, the legend, and he's also a new Majima foil to Ichibal's Kazuga. And Yamai's battle themes are great. They do up the ante in his other subsequent boss fights. And whether it's the fight on the dance floor or the fight where after he helps you in the streets, he then turns against you because Ichiban eggs him on, or the fight in the flaming forest. So many great set pieces that I really love. And we get to learn a little bit more about Yamai throughout his journey. And the reason he's put on this list is the last we see of his character, where he returns to Japan, and he sees the old matriarch of his Yakuza family, a woman he used to love. But due to disease, I believe it was dementia, they stated, she lost a lot of her memory. And by the time that Yamai finally finds her, and we assume he's going to enact vengeance by killing her, instead, he's just looking at her. She's napping, and he's just looking at her, and he's clearly conflicted because she's not the woman that he used to know, the woman that ruined his life by betraying him back in the day, and therefore causing him to leave Japan and go to Hawaii. Instead, we get a really touching moment that pays off of Yamai's whole shtick of always being cold, like freezing cold, despite being in a tropical place like Hawaii. Even when he was in that burning forest, the coat wasn't enough, nor was the fire to keep him warm. And it's revealed here that for Yamai, it wasn't so much a medical condition for himself, although I'm sure something like that does exist in real life. Instead, it was a mental pain, a psychological effect of his hardships. And as Ichiban's crew looks out after Yamai, he just takes off his heavy coat and puts it over Tabata. And Miss Tabata thanks him for keeping her warm since the room was cold. And even though she doesn't recognize him, well, I think her expressing her thanks to a man that she probably doesn't remember, that was enough for Yamai himself as an individual to feel reconciled in some way, to some own degree that speaks to him. And I think that this moment just really stuck out. It's a resonating moment that's heartfelt as it is very, very bittersweet. And Yamai leaves the hospital going to turn himself in, but he waves back to Ichiban that he doesn't feel cold anymore. I think that this end to his whole character arc, for now at least, is powerful, and him handing over the coat and therefore not being cold anymore himself is as visually pleasing as it is metaphorically pleasing. Since Infinite Wealth is a game about finding some kind of forgiveness, I think that in hindsight this scene really works greatly in the game's story and overall themes. So that was my little soapbox on Yutaka Yamai, and he really was a great character and a worthy new addition to the series. I hope we get to see more of him in some way in the future, but if we didn't, then I think this was a fitting end for his character. And now for the third character on the list. Oh, you know him, he's a theory of beauty himself, and lover of beef apparently. Joongi Han. Now, which Joongi Han am I talking about? Well, both, but mainly the one in Yakuza 7. A man who quite literally had to erase his own name. For this particular Joongi Han body double was originally born as Yansu Kim, and he would have to undergo facial reconstruction surgery and had to base his voice off of the primary Joongi Han at the time, the one from Yakuza 6, The Song of Life. The Joongi Han from that game was a brand new look into the next generation of organized crime, and mob bosses. That Jungi-Han in 6 was truly villainous, calculating, and quite intelligent. I wouldn't say he was the kind of snobby, intelligent guy archetype that thinks he knows everything. There might be a little bit of that in him, but I thought that Jungi-Han is more so just a guy who is truly in the know. And him being in the know made him fascinating, especially since Yakuza 6 for Kiryu's perspective was another case of Kiryu getting back into the game and not knowing what the hell's going on, so he has to figure it out himself and through the new characters he meets. And Jungi-Han really comes into the story at a pivotal moment, where it's first learned that from our boy Yuya that Stardust was bought and taken over by a new form of the Jingwan Mafia. So we get a bit of Yakuza 2 coming back to haunt Kiryu once again, and they took the pivotal hangout place from his boys he met in the original game, Yuya and Kazuki. And then when they're at the restaurant, all of a sudden Jungi-Han bursts in with his motley crew of delinquents. And of course Jungi-Han introduces himself in a grandiose fashion, then he burns one of his subordinates' faces on the grill of the hot pot. So it definitely makes a great first impression in terms of a villainous sense. And then as Yakuza 6 unfolds, we fight him a total of 3 times, from the depths of Stardust to following Kiryu back to Hiroshima and Unomichi. And there's 2 more boss fights there. He tries to steal Haruto, and he succeeds in doing so Kiryu has to get the Hiroshima boys on a boat to go after and fight him on this intense cargo platform fight. And it ends with Jungi-Han about to reveal the secret of Unomichi before a certain old man shoots him straight through the head. So I could talk more about that Jungi-Han, but that's really what we need to know. He was a calculating villain who knew what was going on, then he meets his demise before everything else in the game happens, because clearly all the other villains knew that he wasn't important anymore, but he was a standout character for great boss theme. That brings us to Yakuza 7, where I was truly surprised that he came back somehow, but I thought of all the ways to bring back a dead character, the way they did it in 7 with Yansu Kim somehow works. Somehow he had a body double that has the same voice actor, of course. But it works. This Jungi-Han, since the Jingwan Mafia once again got disbanded, he would go work for the Girama Jewel with Sun-hee in Yokohama. And he, compared to his main man who was a flamboyantly dressed host, this Jungi-Han dresses more like an assassin, kind of more like the mole from Judgment. And it works. He's more of a stealth operator, so to speak, with the Girama Jewel and their whole spiderweb of a network. And we also get another boss fight with him in 7. And it's a great fight. A bit harder since you only get about 3 members of Ichiban's squad, but it works. So Jungi-Han, over the course of 7, turns out he's not as bad of a guy as the guy he's supposed to be impersonating. No, he's still a bit of Yansu Kim in him. And he's also smart like the first, or I guess second if you're going by some lore, Jungi-Han from 6. But this new Jungi-Han, he has his own character. He's his own guy. He's his own hobbies. He likes to rent DVDs and never return them, which I remember being guilty of back in the day. And he has a great dynamic, a great bromance of Ichiban, Zhao, Namba, and Adachi, and everyone else. He's honestly a fun character to be around, and Infinite Wealth further cemented and highlighted this, where he once again joins Ichiban's posse, and he helps them in the final eclipse of a battle in Hawaii. So I truly believe that the turnaround that this new Jungi-Han got in 7 and 8 is why he's on this list. Sure, he may not be the individual we first met in 6, but instead, with 7 and 8, this new Jungi-Han, he's a buddy, a true bro. And I just love that the party dynamic of these Ichiban games really shows how much fun you can have with side characters. And that really makes Jungi-Han a worthy addition. And I think this counts as a redeemed villain. He's nowhere near as being an asshole as the original. Instead, he's his own guy. He just follows orders, but he is his own calculating individual with his own dreams and wants in life. I think the 2 bar links that Ichiban can go on, the get to know more about Joong Ki-han, kind of highlight this as we learn that he was, well, Yeon-soo Kim before he got turned into a duplicate of Joong Ki-han. And I like this. It shows that he's still his own guy, and he has his own wants, needs, even though he kind of has a hard time expressing himself, since he's not a bolstering megalomaniac. Instead, he's just a bit more reserved and quiet guy of his own demeanor. I think the big swell DLC, while it may not be canon, was still fun. That whole sequence at the steakhouse and Joong Ki-han's trying to just teach everybody and inform them about the nutritional benefits of meat and different kinds of cuts of steak and ribs and what have you. I thought that was just hilarious. That sure, no one's listening to him, not because they don't appreciate him, just, you know, when you're in friend groups and everybody's just doing their thing, and Joong Ki-han's just trying to express one of his, I guess, hobbies, or since he's like a whole walking encyclopedia of random knowledge, and I just thought it was a funny scene. And then he gets everybody, all the guys, to work out afterwards, and there's even a funny scene in the same DLC where Kiryu, of all characters, pulls out a porno mag out from the ocean, and all the guys hold around and look at it and, you know, talk about the kind of chicks they like. And when Joong Ki-han brings up, oh, you know, he points this chick, then all the guys look at each other like, oh, she looks just like her, because, you know, it's probably talking about Soon-hee. I thought that was pretty fucking funny. It's just funny seeing, you know, these characters who are part of the underworld, but then they like to just goof off and do stupid things, whether it's going to restaurants or pulling out obscene things from the ocean. Stuff like that just really helps you get to know these characters. And with all that in mind, it truly, really culminates in Joong Ki-han originally being seen as a villain, now being a buddy on the side of the heroes. And I like that a lot. So kudos to you, RGG, for really making him a redeemed antagonist. So in conclusion, these three particular examples of redeemed foes in the Yakuza series are just ones that stick out to me, but they show that with some genuine good and human personal writing, you might be able to relate to anyone in some way. Maybe not so much sympathy as it is just empathy, understanding where they come from. And compared to a lot of the ways that Hollywood and modern games try to do things, I think they are pale in comparison to the genuine way that Yakuza is able to make you understand their antagonist. And if they are able to turn around in some way and get some good karma, then, well, you know, I might just end up rooting for them too. So, that'll do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and please, share my Yakuza playlist with all your friends. I'd love for you to check it out. I got a lot of stuff that I think is worth their time and you might just enjoy. You know, I've got over 2 years of Yakuza video essays on this channel. It's part of why I'm Tiger Drop Films. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comments what are some of your other favorite redeemed villains, and I'll see you in the next one. So, stay tuned. Tiger Drop Films, out.